Hey, g'day there. It's Peter here, and welcome back. And today, I want to take you on a journey to the French Alps. And I want to tell you a personal story, one that is about allowing yourself to listen to your body and to go through a full recovery process. So, like me, many of you may have a bucket list where there are things that you want to achieve in your life. And one of those things was to ski in Europe. And it was on the list to do, well, there was a plan to do it when I turned 60, but unfortunately that didn't happen. And that was a few years back now. And so what has happened recently is that we had the opportunity to head to Europe and we headed off to the French Alps to go skiing. So I got to tick off one of those things off of my bucket list. But today is all about what happened on these French Alps. And you know, the wonderful thing about being able to tick off something on your bucket list is when it is more than you expected it to be, it just warms your soul, right? And so the blue skies, the gorgeous big mountains, the snow, everything was just lovely. And we had the opportunity to go with some friends. So we had great company there as well too. And so it was just an absolutely lovely, lovely trip. And I really do want to emphasize that our well-being is really, really important and that staying active is such a big part of that. But today, I want to talk about staying in tune with our bodies and how equally important that is. So, my story today is one of an accident that I had on these lovely mountains. And it is that I experienced concussion for the first time in my life. And so there were a couple of valuable lessons from this, which was about recovery, and the other was about resilience. And so whether you are just planning your own adventure or you're navigating everyday movement challenges, the insights from today's misadventures hopefully will help you from avoiding the same mistakes that I did. So let's talk about it. Let me paint this picture for you. The mountains are spectacular. I've been dreaming about doing this for years since I was first took up skiing, and that was in my 40s. And the mountains were absolutely spectacular. My heart was full. The snow was lovely. It was just where we stayed was beautiful. The service was fantastic. Everything was just as I had envisaged it to be, or probably more than what I had envisaged it to be. But you know, like anything, sometimes life happens, and life can also happen when you're on holidays. And so here I am skiing down the mountain, just having a fabulous time. And the one thing that I think that sometimes we might forget is that some of the activities that we are involved in, they have risks. And so skiing is a risky business. And not only are you thinking about your very own skills and what you have in your toolkit, you're at the mercy of ski lifts, you're at the mercy of weather conditions, you're at the mercy of other people zooming down and around you. And this is how my troubles began. So I've been up and down the slopes a few times, really enjoying it. And I get on the chairlift and I am wedged between a bloke and two kids. And it soon became very apparent to me that they were novices or they hadn't quite mastered the skill of dismounting the chairlift. And so we push the bar off so that we're getting ready to dismount off of the chairlift. And next thing I know, I'm getting pushed from both sides. And I soon noticed that I've got these skis all over the top of my skis. So I cannot get my feet free to, steady myself. And so next thing you know, I am landing on my backside and then boom, fair whack to the head. And so I was basically the sacrificial lamb. And what happened was the chairlift operator, she stopped the lift straight away, which was wonderful. She came over and she checked I was okay. And me being the very experienced, seasoned Aussie that I am, I just went, yep, I'm okay. Thanks very much. She'll be right. And off I went and I kept on skiing. So I just want to take a pause here and acknowledge something that is really important. The reaction to push through pain or that you've just had a serious fall is a mentality that probably a lot of us have, and especially those of us who are active, and we take pride in this resilience that we have. But what we need to do is make sure that we don't, because we don't want this little bit of discomfort to stop us from doing what we want to do. And mental toughness definitely has its place, but sometimes it can actually work against us. And there is some research to show this. In a 2019 study in the Journal of Neurotrauma, it found that cognitive and physical rest within the first 24 to 48 hours, particularly after concussion, it significantly improves our recovery time. And so I'm not aware of any of that, right? So it's the first time that I've ever had a concussion. And so I just kept on skiing. And then I started to get just basically my head started pounding. My heart started racing, and I really felt like I was running this marathon. And I know that when you're at altitude, sometimes it is harder to, grasp your breath. And so I'm pushing it off to that really. And then I started to feel a little bit off color. And then I realized that I'm not really that unfit. And this isn't about altitude. I need to go inside and I need to find out what's going on with me. And so I head in to the hotel nurse and I have a chat with her about what had happened. Just as quick as you can say concussion protocol, she is shipping me off to the medical center in town. And so it turns out that I did cop a proper dose of concussion. Now, I've had whiplash before from a fender bender many years ago when someone rear-ended me at a set of lights. This was a whole different kettle of fish. The symptoms were sneaky. They didn't all show up straight away. I had a headache, and then came this dizziness, and then there was a bit of nausea and this sensitivity to light. Then I started to get a little bit of blurred vision as well too. I was feeling a bit like a vampire. And so my brain was feeling like it was wrapped up in cotton wool. It's really hard to describe. My head felt like it was just whizzed around in a bit of a buzz. And what surprised me was, here I am in France, and, between having smartphones, the doctor and I managed to communicate quite well about what was actually happening, which was wonderful. Technology is great, right? And so what surprised me was learning how concussion impacts the brain at a cellular level. And so when your head takes a hit, the brain actually moves around inside your skull, causing this cascade of chemical reactions. And, and so it causes these cells to have a little bit of trouble, functioning and communicating. And so according to the research at Cleveland Clinic, a concussion triggers this energy crisis in the brain. And so those injured brain cells need more energy to heal. So the energy itself reduces blood flow to those areas, and it feels like you need that extra fuel in your tank because you're running low. And that is precisely why you get fatigue, confusion, the headache. Um, and it's basically that the brain doesn't have the energy that it needs to do what it normally does do. And so it was very, very different to that whiplash experience that I had, which was, soft tissue in the back of the neck. And so it meant that cognitively and emotionally, everything just seemed to be out of whack. So I felt a bit like having an out of body experience, really, particularly from my head perspective. And so I then needed to, what I would normally take as a painkiller, that was a no-go zone. So there was a bit of an education in what to do to manage the pain as well too. So with the whiplash, it was all about the anti-inflammatories. But with concussion, it's you need to manage the system, the symptoms that you have, but you need to be aware of any of the warning signs that there's something more sinister going on. And so the diagnosis was basically, or the recovery process was go and rest. Okay. And it meant proper rest. So not rest like I would normally do, which was check my emails, do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It meant lay in your dark room, do absolutely nothing, that kind of rest, which is a bit hard for someone who likes a little bit of activity. And so I think that was probably harder than having the injury itself. And so here I am in these gorgeous mountains, and I'm laying on my bed with the curtains closed. And so it's really interesting that there's this fascinating study published in the Journal of Neurology, which found that your mental activities like the reading and the screen time and, and even having complex conversations can all delay your recovery process, and it puts more demand on your already compromised neural pathways. And so, that the science itself is ever evolving around concussion, and there is strong evidence that shows, it's a gradual return to activity and what that protocol should look like. And so it's this step-by-step approach. And I think it's probably more important that if we are over the age of, 55, particularly if we're postmenopausal, it means that we have that decreased level of protective hormones like estrogen and progesterone. And so it means that it can take a little longer for our bodies to recover as well. So really, really listening to our body and the advice that we get, and checking that advice and making sure that we're comfortable with it is really, really important. Now, thankfully, my recovery was short-lived. I started to feel better each day. I got to go outside, and then eventually I did get to get back out on the mountains and do some skiing. And there's no way that I was going to let a bump on the noggin, put off the whole experience and, have a big impact on that thing that I've had on my bucket list for such a long time. So I think what we want to talk about really is the lessons learned and moving forward. And so here's the moral of my little misadventure. Don't be a hero. I'm always trying to be a hero, but particularly don't be a hero when it comes to head knocks. In hindsight, I should have stopped then instead of pushing through. The other thing is I probably need to be a lot pickier about the people that I get on the chairlift with, because I've had several experiences on the chairlift where I've been knocked over and used as the sacrificial lamb. And so all of this has just reinforced that listening to your body isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of wisdom. And that wisdom is more valuable, not less, as we accumulate years of life experience. So you might be thinking right now, has this put me off skiing? No, not on your life. It hasn't. You don't get to this age to let a few bumps and bruises stop you from living. But next time I will be packing a little bit more wisdom in with my ski gear. So I often talk about how movement builds confidence as we age, and that still remains absolutely true. But the crucial distinction between pushing our limits in healthy ways and ignoring warning signs is that we need to pay attention to our bodies more and not just simply push through it. And so true confidence includes knowing when to rest and when to recover. And so I think it's really important that we honor our body when it needs to do either or and listen to it. And it's not saying that we're giving up, but we are investing in our well-being just a little bit more and understanding that sometimes we do need to allow ourselves to rest, recover fully before we move on to doing that next thing or getting back to that next thing. Now, I like to finish these sessions off with a move moment. And so today I want to share with you a move moment which is all about helping us prevent falls and injuries. So this is a really interesting one, and it's something that you can do whilst you're sitting there. So just sitting up nice and tall in your posture, shoulders down, relaxed. Think about, there's a little string up through your head and it's pulling you upwards. And it's as simple as a head nod. So taking your chin down to your chest, as comfortable as possible for you, and then bringing it back to that center position as well, or that neutral position. And so do that a few times, and then gently tilt your ear to one of your shoulders, left or right, it doesn't matter, it's your choice. And so then you're going to bring it back to that center position, and then you're going to change over and do the other side. And once you've done that, then what you're going to do is you're going to turn your head to one of those sides, left or right, and you're going to look out over your shoulder. So I want you to make sure that you pay attention, that you're not pushing through it, that you take it nice and gentle, that you don't force it. And so there is research that shows that these exercises improve the connection between our brain and our muscles that support our neck and back. And what they do is they significantly help reduce the risk of falls by improving our balance and our coordination. So what's not to love about that? It's so simple, right? We can do it whilst we're sitting down. We could do it if we're working. We can take a little break and do a little bit of exercise. So it is quite a nice little move moment that you could add into any part of your day, right? So here are my key takeaways from my misadventure or my little incident. It is that different injuries require different approaches. And so what works for muscle strains or whiplash are not appropriate for concussion or other types of injuries. And so what we want to do is educate ourselves on the different types of responses to the common injuries that might happen in our favorite activities. So since coming back, I've spent a little bit of time saying what are the most common injuries that occur through skiing and what are the protocols for that. But make sure you're looking at sound research as well too. The second thing is if you get a head injury, immediate rest. It's non-negotiable. That first 24 to 48 hours is super important in recovering quicker. And of course, that's what we want to do, right? And the third lesson was about true resilience isn't ignoring the pain, but responding a little bit wiser, more wisely to the body's signals so that we can get back to those activities that we love a little bit more quickly and safely. And so I just want to say, though, pursuing these adventures at any age is definitely worthwhile pursuing. And they're even better when we bring along a little bit of wisdom, when we think about what's happened and how we can learn from these experiences. So my challenge for you this week is twofold. First, I want you to practice those neck awareness exercises from the move moment that I've just spoken about. And then second is reflect on your own approach to injuries or discomfort and ask yourself, are you someone who tends to push through the pain? And do you listen to your body when it speaks? Do you consider how you might and think about how you might strike a better balance between that resilience and that self-care? So thanks for joining me today. I really hope that you've got something out of today. And if you have, please go ahead and let me know. I would really appreciate it. And I will be back next week. So take care. Until then, I'll see you soon.